Welcome back. Israel set to withdraw from Lebanon as part of the ceasefire deal, but will keep troops in 5 strategic positions despite the pullback deadline. Lebanon's president is calling for a full withdrawal, while Israeli officials say military presence in the south remains necessary. Meanwhile, talks on the phase 2 of Israel's ceasefire with Hamas have yet to start. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he's committed to President Trump's plans for Gaza. I spoke with Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff on Sunday Morning Futures Sunday.
Well, Maria, phase 2 is a little bit more complicated than phase 1. But phase 2 is absolutely going to begin. I've actually had calls this morning, I can tell you, with Prime Minister Netanyahu, with Prime Minister Mohammed from Qatar, and as well with Director Hassan from Egypt, who is their Director of Intelligence. And we had very, very productive and constructive calls this morning about the sequencing of phase 2, setting forth positions on both sides so we can understand where we level set where we are today, and then continuing talks this week at a location to be determined so that we can figure out how we get to the end of phase 2 successfully.
Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane, back with us. General, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, delighted to be here, Maria.
So where are we, do you expect, on these talks for phase 2? Phase 2 in this Israeli-Hamas ceasefire was supposed to mean all of the hostages were released, and we still have hostages.
Yeah, so phase 1 is 42 days in length. It began on January the 19th, and it ends on March the 2nd. And, you know, there's dispute over the actual numbers of hostages remaining, but round numbers, somewhere around 70-ish is where we are, with the possibility about half of those may, in fact, be dead. So we've got considerable hostages that still have to be released prior to March the 2nd. And then phase 2 kicks in, and those negotiations were, you know, supposed to start well over a week ago. And the substance of them, as you just indicated in the interview Sunday, are just about to get started. Phase 2 is really tough because it asks for the complete withdrawal of all IDF forces out of Gaza. In other words, an end to the war. And secondly, Hamas is going to give up governance of Gaza and disarm. Those objectives neither party wants to achieve. The Israelis do not want to leave Gaza because they know that they're not going to leave Hamas in control of Gaza, and they don't want to leave thousands of Hamas soldiers still in Gaza. So in the back of the mind of the Israelis, they intend to go back into Gaza to finish the business that still remains unfinished, as I stated. And certainly Hamas is not going to give up control. So these two objectives of phase 2 have always been a bit irreconcilable, heading towards that. If something can be worked out, certainly to everyone's satisfaction, that would be great. But as I indicated, that is doubtful. Here's the issue also. If the hostages are not released, if there's a stall in these hostages, Israel will likely go back into Gaza as a result of the failure of Hamas to fulfill the deal in releasing the hostages. Right. So I think the likelihood of returning to hostility is more definite than the likelihood we're going to have a complete truce here and an end to the war permanently. Yeah. While that's obviously an aspiration, it's not realistic given where both parties are.
Yeah, it's too bad, really. What a shame as Hamas pushes back on this idea that they will not be part of any governance of Gaza on the other side of all of this. And you've got a senior Iranian official warning the U.S. and Israel can't do a damn thing about Tehran's nuclear ambitions. And they're going to keep building its nuclear weapon after Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Netanyahu vowed to counter Iran's aggression while meeting with Rubio. Watch this.
I want to tell you that it's heard loud and clear here and everywhere else. Today, Secretary Rubio and I had a very productive discussion with our staffs on a number of issues. None of them are more important than Iran. Israel and America stand shoulder to shoulder in countering the threat of Iran. We agreed that the Ayatollahs must not have nuclear weapons. And we also agreed that Iran's aggression in the region has to be rolled back. Over the last 16 months, Israel has dealt a mighty blow to Iran's terror axis. Under the strong leadership of President Trump and with your unflinching support, I have no doubt that we can and will finish the job.
General, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that, Iran is pushing back, saying you're not going to stop us from building a nuclear weapon. But, at the same time, President Trump has instituted the maximum pressure campaign back on Iran. Is that going to be enough to stop them from pursuing this?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, the reality is Iran is back on its heels in a way it's not been in 44 years. Hamas and obviously Hezbollah have been seriously decimated. They've lost their strategic platform in Syria. They're military defenseless in being able to defend against any kind of substantive air attack in their country because their air defense systems have been eliminated by Israel. We have never seen Iran in this kind of a desperate situation. So what's left for them? To develop a nuclear weapon, to preserve the regime. That's what's left. And we've got to take that off the table. The United States and Israel agree. Try to get them to voluntarily dismantle with a date certain and absolute verification of that. And with the alternative is a U.S.-supported Israel strike to dismantle the nuclear enterprise. That is kind of where we are. Those are the two options, and those options will be executed in the next few weeks, one way or the other.
And then there's Russia and this Russia-Ukraine war. What are your expectations here? I mean, Russia just released an American citizen who was detained for quote-unquote drug smuggling. That was Caleb Wayne Byers, arrested in Moscow back on February 7th after cannabis-laced marmalade was allegedly found in his luggage. He's currently at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow awaiting a flight home, General. And it's happening ahead of the U.S. and Russian officials meeting in Saudi Arabia today to discuss setting up a summit between Trump and Putin and ending the war on Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky is warning that any talks will yield no results unless Ukraine is part of the discussion. Steve Witkoff told me Ukraine is part of the discussion, and just because it doesn't have a seat at that table today doesn't mean it's not part of it. Scott Bessent was just with Zelensky trying to do a deal for the rare earth minerals. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, I think that what this meeting is about, the key thing that took place last week was President Trump and President Putin talking to each other. And President Trump is feeling them out. Are you really serious about making a deal here? And Putin said yes. So this meeting is confirmation of that. Does Putin really want to make a deal, or is his conditions so difficult that we can't find some kind of a compromise? And the early indications, Russia has a very hardened position here. And what are we talking about? Well, number one, they want more territory that they're not even occupying, 30% more than the territory currently Russian troops are on. That's not going to happen. Secondly, they don't want Zelensky as an elected official. They want to have elections. Well, Zelensky, there's martial law, and he can't even hold elections. They want Ukraine military to demilitarize. And then they want no security arrangement with Ukraine or any other country whatsoever. Those are pretty hardened positions. And this team, Trump's team there, Rubio, Walz, and Witkoff, will get a feel, I think, whether something is achievable. Are they willing to compromise on some of those conditions? And I'm confident Zelensky and his team will be involved in these negotiations. The president has said as much, and so have the key members of his negotiating team.
Well, you know that there will be lots of criticisms about any deal reached if Ukraine has to give up a lot of land, right, General?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Zelensky is not going to give up territory that Russia is not sitting on right now. As a matter of fact, Zelensky has territory himself in the Kursk area that he's likely going to use for negotiations.
I see. General, it's great to talk with you as always. Thanks very much for your insights, as always, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you.
General Jack Keane.